Welcome to the AI Chat Podcast. I'm your host, Jaeden Schaefer. Today on the podcast, I am super excited to be talking to Brijesh, who is the CEO of Flex AI. They're doing some really phenomenal things. They came out with an amazing round of funding last year and are working on some interesting things in AI and infrastructure. So I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about what you guys are seeing in the industry. But before we get into that, would you mind giving everyone a little bit of a background on yourself and how you kind of got into this, what got you started on Flex AI?
Yeah. Jaeden, thanks for having me on the podcast. Really exciting to be here. I'm actually really impressed by what you guys do. So looking forward to continuing the conversation in future too. A little bit about my background. I've been in the Valley for about 20 years, 25 years. Been working at companies that are now multi-trillion-dollar companies, NVIDIA, Apple, Tesla. At my last job at Intel, I became responsible for one of the largest supercomputers in the world, Aurora. That is currently the highest power computer, at least in 2022. It was the highest power computer that anybody had built. So I got responsible to deliver that, build it, and finish it. And as I was finishing it, I realized that hardware is okay. It's hard.
Yeah.
But actually, the word software is a misnomer because software was the hardest thing. And I realized that the challenge was not just getting it up and running, but really getting customers and users to take advantage of this massive capacity. And it came from not having the right infrastructure management tools. So obviously, we spent a couple of years, we delivered an amazing product to the Argonne National Lab that's actually now doing research in weather, drug discovery, nuclear research, a whole bunch of other defense-related topics that we probably don't know about. But it gave me an insight that a future of AI, a future of high-performance computing actually doesn't start from the bottoms up of putting silicon together and putting systems together. It starts from the top down of building an infrastructure layer that allows customers and users to use the underlying infrastructure in an efficient way. And that gave me this idea of starting Flex AI. About 2 years ago, we started the company and I had this vision of creating a unifying universal AI platform that will allow customers, users to select between any kind of architecture, whether it's NVIDIA or AMD or Amazon or Trainium, GPUs from, other companies that are still trying to actually get in the business. It was an interesting idea because NVIDIA already delivered GPUs and there were many companies coming up with this model called GPU as a service. And I realized GPU as a service still ends up being a bare metal exercise. So you get GPUs and now you have to go put a whole stack on top of it before you can take advantage of it. When Jensen put the first cluster for Grok, actually Elon put the first cluster for Grok, Jensen actually praised him for getting the whole system up and running in 19 days. Now, 19 days is not the norm. The industry actually struggles with it for about 2 to 3 months. And still, on top of that, you can only run handful of use cases, handful of workloads. So if you want to provide a generic platform that allows you to do training, fine-tuning, inference, and many other AI-driven workloads, it's not sufficient to actually just set up your PyTorch-enabled environment. You need to now have an ability to build an orchestration layer, to build a scheduler, so you maximize utilization, so you minimize waste, and you give good quality of service to all the users because you're not just dealing with one customer, one user per platform.
Yeah.
For companies like Grok or Meta or OpenAI training part, it's okay to have no idea of what a scheduler is because when you run training, it probably runs for months. It's okay to not have any thoughts on underutilization because it's going to be utilized 100% pegged for many months. Now, when it comes to what we do, our customers are building models that are either based on open source models or developing some of their own, but they're much smaller. They're much, let's call them medium-sized model, not large language model, but medium language model.
Sure.
And they don't consume capacities that are like thousands of GPUs, but they also then want to use capacity to run the same models as inference, right? I mean, that's where you get value. So we started the idea of Flex AI with let's simplify what it takes to run training or train your model. It was a 2-click option. You just come on our platform, you tell us how many GPUs you need, and within 2 clicks, you're able to now start a training. And you pay for work done and not rental cost for weeks or months. Now, it has evolved in the last 6 to 9 months. So we started with training and we saw that most customers who were training were then looking for what do we do with this model? Obviously, we have to serve.
Yeah.
And that's where we started getting into inference. We have some really interesting opportunities on inference too. Inference demand is very spiky,
Okay.
comes and goes, right? You ask a question, suddenly there's a peak there, and then you're thinking, and it's a long periods of idle.
Yeah.
So if you have capacity built for your peaks, you're going to sit on a very large capacity of idle. We have now developed auto scaling to a point where you can go almost down to zero. See, this is another thing. We don't go to zero. This is a new technology we have developed
Okay.
for inference workloads. When your demand is low, we can actually put it down back into a fractional GPU.
Okay.
So it's not a full GPU. I can divide it into n number of parts, and many customers could be using the same GPU when they are idling.
Oh, okay.
There's no cold start issue. The moment they want higher demand, the data is still there in memory, the model is still loaded, but it's just consuming a very small fraction of compute. And the moment you get to higher demand, we now spin up larger number of GPUs, full GPUs rather than just fractional GPUs. So this whole confusion and challenge around cold starts and spinning down to zero and all that, all completely solved. And yet customers are not wasting any cycles, any idle cycles. So that's where we are. We are also looking at some other really interesting opportunities on HPC workloads, scientific workloads that requires us to build containers. And so you are a scientist and you can actually go develop some research around maybe quantum computers, quantum computing, maybe some research around blockchain, maybe some research around security. You can actually go bring in your work in any model, any way, and we can help you containerize it and put it in a scheduler and a queue such that you get the right amount of resources on the infrastructure that you select or we give you.
Okay. And I just got to say, what you talked about with the cold start issue is actually amazing. I don't know if everyone listening quite understands this, but it is super disruptive. I have a software company called AI Box, and the cold start was something that when we first launched, we seriously struggled with, where essentially as soon as someone asks a model a question, if the GPUs have spun down to zero, they got to boot it up. And so if someone's talking with one particular AI model, or even your account is, the first question takes forever to get the response. Once you get it going and it's spun up, you can ask questions and it's all good. But it's kind of funny because I found that like people I think in Europe, because of the time zone differences, they kept getting the cold starts on a bunch of stuff. And they would send me like support requests complaining about it. And I felt bad for them. By the time the West Coast came on, the East Coast had already been on for 3 hours. The West Coast, they had no problem. They loved the product. Anyways, the cold start is a serious problem. So I love how you guys are solving that. I also love how you're splitting the GPUs up into multiple pieces for multiple customers. That's really innovative and really cool. So tell me a little bit about maybe the evolution of Flex AI. I think it first came onto my radar. I saw like probably a lot of people too. Like there's a TechCrunch article that was written like a year ago about it. I think back in April when you guys came out of stealth, you'd raised $30 million. And everyone was like, ooh, this like Paris-based company. Tell me a little bit about the evolution of maybe what you initially set out to solve, and has anything changed, or where have you kind of moved in, like, let's say the last year since that happened?
Absolutely. Yeah, look, it was very exciting time as I was planning to start my new company. I had this idea that I wanted to actually get into AI compute infrastructure business. I had options to set up the company in Spain, Paris, or Silicon Valley, which is where I am based. But what I saw was the demand for starting new companies in Paris was the highest. And I had some connections. I landed there in June and I spent some time with some of my friends there. And within a period of 3 days or something, I had met 5 founders who were starting companies in Paris right at that moment. And I had met 3 investors who were just looking to invest in companies that are going to solve some of our compute demand and compute supply discrepancy problem.
Yeah.
And the challenge was actually pretty heightened in Europe because, NVIDIA is an American company. OpenAI was already on the radar. They were already delivering ChatGPT. So they had enough demand, they had enough supply.
Yeah.
But Europe was already starting to feel that we'll get crunch, we'll get squeezed in this whole business. And if we don't have our own solutions, not just the GPU side, but also how to consume GPUs, how to let people build faster models. Mistral was actually just about getting set up around the same time in Paris.
Okay.
So exciting time at that time. Now, what we started with was this, and I was partnering with a very friendly company and friends of mine
Okay.
who were building a model company at that time too. I can't name the name here because we're not in any partnership at this time. But the idea was that as models get mature, the only difference between model companies is going to be the cost of serving.
Okay.
The models will get built. There's going to be a lot of money spent by VCs all flowing to NVIDIA. That's okay. But as soon as products are actually getting close to maturity, companies that have the economy of scale and the cost optimization done are going to survive and others will have to fold because if you look at, and that actually ended up being true. If you look at what's happening in today's environment, companies that are actually doing extremely well on their ARR numbers and, raise $200 million revenue and all that, the cost of serving that is extremely high. You connect to ChatGPT or Gemini or Anthropic or any of those models, the cost per token is extremely high. You will just get killed within months if you don't take control of that part of your business. So we started to look at, okay, what are the better ways of improving cost for our customers? And as we move towards models are now mature, we get into inference. We're also reducing a bit of dependency on the CUDA mode, right? So yes, you still use CUDA for training models, but serving models is straightforward OpenAI API. Every single LLM kind of models are all leveraging that same API. Hugging Face made it a standard. Now, what does that do? It allows more people to participate in this ecosystem. So we are seeing a resurgence of AMD. We just talked to them this morning. Their products are actually delivering better value on throughput per dollar. There are other companies that we are working with. We announced our partnership with Tenstorrent, a friend of mine, Jim Keller. He is the CEO of the company. They're building an AI solution. Obviously, they're still early stage. Their software is not yet mature, but what we are seeing is the models that we can run on those systems, they run 6 to 10x more cost effective compared to any of the latest gear from the large companies. Now, we have to basically keep pushing and keep delivering that value to customers, but it's not easy. You, Jaeden, won't be able to actually get on any random system in the world and try to get inference running. So what FlexAI does is we provide a serverless inference option that we can recommend which architecture will serve the most cost-effective solution for you. Or if you care about just latency, for example, some of these new architectures are still struggling to get their first token latency sorted out.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Your business is mature, you have enough money, you can select NVIDIA. Great, we have those. Or if you care about massive throughput and spikes and making sure that you don't over provision things, we can find you AMD or some other solutions too. Bottom line, it's not just one thing that you need to depend on for serving these models. And that's an evolution in my mind. So from where we started to building solutions for training and improving efficiency and this is 2023. So we were still struggling with MTBF failures. Massive amount of energy and time was being lost at restarting training.
Yeah.
Going back to the previous checkpoints because something failed, right?
Yeah.
When you're dealing with thousands and thousands of these nodes, something will fail. And we didn't know how to fix it without costing maybe 8 hours of work or a few hours of work. Now we have developed a solution that has zero cost to your training and yet zero impact when something fails because we'll quickly replace a failing node and let you continue on your journey without wasting any cycles. So those are things we were solving, but now we are in this inference place where multi-tenancy, cold start problems are a challenge, and being able to actually serve it on multiple architectures. Now, it is not easy for anyone to pick this and just drive their own solution. So we are providing this platform that makes it easy for you to pick any of the solutions available.
I love that. That's amazing. Do you notice like with like your customer base, is there like a specific, is it basically everybody, or is there like a specific industry that's more interested or more concerned about this that you work more with, like healthcare or legal or some area, or is it pretty much across the board?
It's across the board. The thing is, within a week, we have talked to crypto companies, healthcare companies, new legal ML-based legal companies. They're replacing lawyers. Healthcare companies, we are actually have been working with them for quite some time. This challenge is universal,
Yeah.
where people are starting to mature their AI-based solutions. And as soon as they get to a point of, here is my solution, the next question is, what's the cost of it? And
Yeah.
that's where we come in. If you want to optimize cost, we were just talking to one of the crypto companies recently. They're based somewhere in Asia, and they were like, our customer base is all over the world. And to keep the quality of service high, we pick the highest quality and highest number of servers in prime locations. And the cost is getting to a point where we are definitely concerned about it. And so, can you do something about it? I'm like, absolutely. There are many things that we can do on our platform for a company like that, Jaeden. Number one, we can let you experiment with multiple models. You have your application, we have a playground. You can come in, you bring in a connection to, let's say, OpenAI model. In parallel, you can continue to run experiments with Anthropic or some Llama version or Quen version or DeepSeek version and see which one of those smaller, more efficient models can actually still provide the same quality results. So that's one experiment. The second experiment we do is you have a model, we can actually help you do quantization with it. That actually improves the throughput. That actually improves the quality and the cost there. And again, these experiments can be run pretty quickly, seamlessly. It's one integrated dashboard that you can see the results, compare which worked fine, which worked worse. And then eventually, when you're ready, we can help you port these models to the right architecture to get you the best cost.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, and that's basically what every company is looking for is how do I save money? How do I do it the most efficiently? Especially when, some of these costs can be pretty astronomical. I know
Absolutely.
one of our biggest costs that I spend on my company. But something I'm curious about with everything you're building, like from the infrastructure to the architect and everything, what are some of the toughest maybe engineering or challenges that you're dealing with in building this out? What are some of the hardest parts for you?
Yeah, it's a really good question because, one of the things I had this thought about was we're trying to accelerate the time that VMware took in the general purpose compute era to modernize the cloud offerings. See, Amazon started with bare metal offerings, right? So when you went to a cloud, it was literally moving a physical system from your under the desk or in your warehouse to Amazon's data center. That was it. You still got physical access to a machine. You owned it, you rented it, you paid the cost for it, right? VMware and Amazon and a bunch of other companies came around and said, hey, physical access is really just the worst way of dealing with this shared infrastructure. Why don't we actually create a virtualization layer and get people a sense of a machine, but really theoretically, multiple people are using the same resource and getting the same experience as if they have one machine.
Mm-hmm.
It took them about 10 to 15 years to mature the entire space, with starting with virtualization all the way to building microservices, where now you as a developer, you do not have to think about machines and writing code. You actually have to think about what my application needs and pick the right microservices and get it done. That's the new world, right? And obviously it took time. We started with the mission that we will accelerate that entire path for AI infrastructure to 2 years. And that's what we're doing.
Wow.
Now, we had some advantages and there's some tailwind here, right? Which is we know how this general purpose cloud industry went. Scheduling, virtualization, multi-tenancy, security, data privacy, GDPR, all of those things were known entities that even the AI workloads needed to solve. So we did that. However, we definitely did not have a good understanding of how to think about dividing same workload on a single piece of GPU. GPUs were not really highly virtualized by the time we started.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that we have been kind of working on, and this is a slow path. But we believe that we are getting to a point where both AMD and NVIDIA are supporting high quality virtualization and multi-tenancy on their GPUs. And that's something that we are driving very effectively. And we believe that this is a hard problem to solve, but our background, my background of computer architecture and GPU architecture is helping drive some of those decisions and some of those product developments.
That's amazing. That's super, super exciting. When you're kind of looking towards the future of where where you see maybe your industry, the overall industry going, what are some predictions that you're making today or some things you're preparing for today that you think most people aren't preparing for? They don't understand maybe about what's coming.
That's an interesting question. I don't pretend to be like know it all. I believe that there are signs that people are already realizing what's coming up next. But there is also, in some sense, still a massive push towards building large infrastructure without thinking about utilization, energy, and in some ways, access. So if you think about what access means today, if your cost of delivering AI solutions is so high that only certain segment of the society can reach it, that means you reduced access. So while there is a business case to be made in terms of reducing cost so you can improve your bottom line, there's also a really important task here, which is reducing the cost of accessing AI. I'm just calling it AI, not AI infrastructure, which will eventually translate into AI infrastructure. But if you don't reduce the cost, a big portion of the society will not have access to AI. I was in Bangalore recently, and I was talking to some of the telecom companies and some of the partners that they are working with. So they worked with a local or a US company called Perplexity. And now one of the telecom companies, Airtel, is offering Perplexity on their platform free for all of their subscribers. Now, that is something that makes sense. It is the right thing to do. However, if it is not affordable, let's say, and it continues to actually cost tons and tons of money to deliver that value, it's not a sustainable model. So the cost must go down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I believe that people are not seeing this need for reducing cost faster and at a more urgent pace. Now, on the other hand, I do see the industry actually adjusting to, we are moving past training and we are focusing on inference. I said this last year, as this industry settles down, I think the ratio is going to be 90 to 10. 90% compute is going to be spent on inference, 10% on training. It's going to be a handful of consolidated players who do big models, but the rest of them are going to be either an optimized version or a fine-tuned version or a reduced size version of those same models for their specific use cases. And there's another thing that actually is happening right in front of us, which is as the model context windows are increasing,
Yeah.
the old hacks of using RAG kind of things to do your custom search and based on your private data and all that are dying.
Right.
And we are moving very quickly away from RAGs ourselves, even though we support RAG on our platform. And if you're still building something with RAG, you can use it. But quickly, everything is going to be multi-model and MCP. So we believe that RAGs are dead. And I'm not surprising anyone.
That's interesting because I do still talk to people that are, I was, just talking to someone recently that is using it as a major part of their stack and what they're doing. So, I mean, that's some really good alpha right there for everyone listening is, think about what happens to RAG and the entire RAG industry and everything around that as the context windows, like they're getting massive. Like sometimes you get these announcements, I think, Google and OpenAI and everyone, and I'm just like, million token context window. And like these, it's only going to get bigger, right? Everything's just accelerating. Everything's getting bigger. So yeah, it's a phenomenal time to be in the industry. Wow. Thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing everything you guys are doing, sharing all of your advice. If people are interested in trying out Flex AI and integrating with it, where can they find you and what's the best way for them to do that?
Just go to flex.ai and click on start with free credits or just click on the link to connect with us. We are also on Discord. find us on Discord, connect with us. We are also on LinkedIn, connect with us. And we are happy to help you get started with some free credits and giving it a go.
Amazing. Super, super excited. Thanks again so much for coming on the show and sharing to all of the listeners. Yeah, go check out. It's the greatest domain name ever. It's only 4 letters. Flex, FLEX.ai. I'm a sucker for short domains, so that's amazing. Thanks so much, everyone, for tuning into the podcast today. Make sure to leave us a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts, and we will see you in the next episode.